I think leaving it off a little bit in retrospect makes a lot of sense because it makes it easier to paint. Instead of having to cut in tight to that aluminum piece, you have a little gap to get the brush in there.
And, we're not talking a half an inch gap here. We're talking like, just so it's not touching, basically.
Like 3 or 4 inches.
It's because, the same the same reason why...
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Editorial Director Justin Fink.
Good morning, afternoon.
Digital Brand Manager Rob Watzak.
Hello.
And producer Jeff Rose.
Hey there.
Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please include a mailing address so we can send you a sticker. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Wow, this is going to be a good show. It's nice to have you guys on.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
So I want to dive right into this, what we heard from Diami, who's our commercial roofing friend on Long Island, right?
Yes, sir.
I like Diami.
Me too.
He's a good guy. He's smart, too.
His letter's awesome.
Yep.
Gentlemen, as you correctly predicted in the odd assortment of building envelope scenarios, episode 215, I do listen, and I heard Justin's tale of installing EPDM on his porch roof with a combination of excitement and utter frustration.
Of course.
I share Justin's frustration with the current state of low VOC bonding adhesive in the Northeast. When the switch was made to low VOC bonding a few years ago, it was immediately noticed that the low VOC was dramatically worse smelling than the old high VOC glue.
Yeah, can you pause there for a second? Because
Sure.
I did not see that coming. I mean, I just assumed.
No?
Like, I didn't realize. My take on it was this low VOC glue still smells really bad. Why would it smell so bad? And he's saying it actually smells worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's healthier but stinkier. Is that the
I
idea?
don't even know how that's possible, but it makes me feel better.
He says this smell, coupled with a long required open time, often 45 minutes to an hour in colder temperatures, has led most commercial firms to abandoning standard bonding adhesive and switch to a newer spray-applied adhesives. These newer adhesives are low VOC, extremely low odor, and have a flash time of 5 to 10 minutes in cold temperatures. They only cost about 5% more per installed square foot and require about $300 worth of application equipment versus a standard paint roller. That said, it's absolutely amazing to quickly and securely glue down EPDM in mid-20 degree temperatures.
I like how much you have to slow down when you say EPDM.
Oh my God, you got to get the letters in the right order, right?
So can I make a quick note here?
Sure.
So it's pretty much similar in the cabinet making industry too, because everybody had the roll-on contact cement, which is like
terrible,
unbearable, and the spray-on stuff. It's so fast and it's so much less stinky. It's just that you have to have the equipment. It's kind of like the same thing between having a foam gun or going out and buying the cheap cans of spray foam. It's a little extra investment, but it makes your life so
$300 bucks is not a lot of money, right?
No.
It's like that's.
I thought is yours 300? I thought he said 3,000.
No,
300.
All right.
Regarding Justin's roof, he mentioned that the reason for placing the crappy roll roofing was due to an occasional leak where the flat roof met the shingle roof. This tie-in doesn't really relate to the type of roof membrane, but to how the flat roof material is connected to the shingle roof material. This is to say how the waterproof membrane ties into the water shedding surface above. Could Justin elaborate how this was done, as it's arguably the most important part of this new porch roof?
It's also the hardest part.
He says, thank you, and keep up the half-informed discussion of flat roofing.
Yes. This will not be the other half that really fills in any blanks either. So the problem that I had is, I was chasing what I thought was a leak between the roll roofing and the architectural shingles, asphalt shingles, and the rest of the roof. What had happened was when I knew I was doing the roof, I confidently went to pull back the existing shingles, take a few rows up so you can slide this new stuff underneath and then lay them back down again. They never seem to come up as easily as you hope they will. And one little tear, and now you have a place where water can sneak in and bypass the layered, the water shedding layers of the asphalt shingles. Mm-hmm. So I mistakenly thought that I was getting a leak between the asphalt shingles and the roll roofing, but really it was a crack in a shingle that was a couple of courses higher than that I had damaged while trying to tie it in. And I didn't realize that until after the EPDM membrane was in because the leak didn't go away. So it was like a long, expensive route to
fix
not
fix
the right problem.
Yeah, not fix
Yeah.
the right thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's nothing worse than spending all that time up there and then you get up and it's raining and there's a big brown drip of water stain on your porch. Like, oh, I am a failure at stopping water.
So isn't it possible to just slip some aluminum flashing under that broken shingle?
Yeah, I mean, or I mean, you could just fix it on the surface too, really, with just a little bit of
Squirt some pookie in there.
Yeah. But you know,
I think a combination approach might be wise. A little bib flashing under the shingle.
when this kind of stuff goes wrong, I just want to put shingles on the whole freaking roof. I'm so tired of like chasing little microscopic leaks and things.
You're ready to do the whole thing over again.
Meanwhile, when I painted my house years ago, I used pump jacks and I gave a lens to get to the top, and I screwed the brackets down into the roof shingles because I needed to. I couldn't get them onto the crown molding and the trim because I needed to paint there. So I was like, all right, I'm going to screw them down to the shingles, and I'm going to patch this later. One of the brackets is still on the roof, and I have no problems. There's a screw going through the roof. No problems.
Self-sealed on the way in.
Some stupid little microscopic leak is ruining my life at the porch, though.
Yeah. Well, you figure they bolt those satellite dishes right through your shingles with some big splooge of
They're
caulk,
not
you know?
supposed to do that.
Yeah, I know.
But people do.
Yeah.
I think like the cable and satellite people are the absolute worst with regard to their care with your house.
Did I ever tell you that story about the friend of mine who his wife worked for some cable company, so they got free cable at the house, and they had the guy sent out to install it?
Yep.
So they had this guy come out, and he was up in the attic, and they just had drywall ceiling in the attic, and he could walk on the the ceiling joist, no problem. And every once in a while, like my friend was downstairs, and he kept seeing the bulges in the drywall. He's like, "Watch where you're stepping up there. Watch." He warned the guy like 5 times. Eventually, his foot went right through the ceiling. Right. So the guy's like, "Oh no, I'll send my foreman out. He'll make it right. He'll send someone to repair it, whatever." So they're waiting, and then she works at the company, so she finally asks somebody because nothing ever happened for a couple of days or a week or whatever, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's no longer with us." He had another house. He had put an aluminum ladder on the side of the house, and the house had vinyl siding on it, and he didn't foot it well. The ladder slid while he was on it and tore all the vinyl siding off the side of the house.
In fairness, it must be very hard to get competent people to do that work, right? But, I think you have to pay a decent wage, and then you get people who are less knuckleheaded.
Yes.
Yeah. Scarier than that is that it's difficult to find people to do things like those energy audit companies.
Oh, I believe it.
And so it's like here they're supposed to be doing this building science focused work to your house.
And that requires a great deal of training, and you're going to have to like climb into disgusting places and stuff. It's like,
I was on an energy audit yesterday.
what'd you think?
How'd it go?
It was really cool. I've, having written about this many times and done videos and stuff, but I'd never actually been there for the whole process. And this was on the project that's going to be our FHB house. It's in Greenwich, Connecticut, and we shot the first video yesterday. And so they're trying to get to down below 1 ACH 50, 1 air change per hour at 50 pascals of pressure, which basically means they want to make a really tight house. 0.6 ACH 50 is passive house air tightness. And it's a big house, so they wanted to get a baseline reading. Like, where are we starting from?
Yeah, you got to know your data to start.
I mean, arguably in this house, they're gutting the thing, and they're taking the siding off, so really it doesn't matter where they work because they can.
It's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. But shockingly, first of all, it's a huge house, and they were at 6 air changes, which was pretty impressive.
That's not terrible.
To me. But I never realized how dramatic that little fan could be.
It's so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, they turned it on. So I've been on job sites where they were doing this in a passive house while they were testing the shell and things, and it's not very dramatic because it's a passive house and it's super tight.
You could make the same pressure with a hairdryer.
Right. So you go into this house and they turn the fan on, and up in the third floor of the house, like a walk-up attic space, they have knee walls, and there's the air handler behind the knee wall. And the line of insulation goes down the roof, down the knee wall, and then wherever. Probably doesn't go anywhere after that. But in other words, the mechanical is outside the envelope, and there's these little double doors with ball catches and a slide bolt. You turn the fan on, and those doors blow open. Yeah. It was incredible.
And that's where your ductwork is.
Yeah. When I ran the blower door in my house, I have curtains on some of my closets, and they were at like a 45-degree angle. The curtains from the wind leaking under the baseboards in the floor in the closet.
It's
Do you
unreal.
remember how many CFM this house was blowing?
I don't remember.
I'm sure it was in the tens of thousands.
I feel like 8,000 something was what I was remembering, but
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, it's a big, voluminous house, I shall say. He was also doing a duct. They were going for a HERS rating too, so that he was doing some duct blast testing too, and it was just kind of cool.
We should tell folks what that is because
that
they
I've
might
never
not,
seen in person.
they might not be familiar with that.
I didn't get to watch the whole thing, Rob, but I saw him doing it. But it's essentially testing the duct system for leakage.
For airtightness, just
Yeah.
like you would an envelope, except you use a smaller fan, right? And you,
Right.
And you tie it into the return air grill, right?
Yep.
And you have to like tape off the registers.
Right. So I didn't get to see him because we were shooting video. I didn't get to watch this guy doing his thing, but I noticed it's a big like 2-story foyer when you walk into the house, and so he had one of those little extendable ladders, one of that ones
Yeah.
that like telescoping, which are super cool by the way. And he goes up on this ladder and he put like this basically like peel and stick. It looked like saran wrap kind of stuff, blue saran wrap, right over the ceiling register there, and then he put like a string under it. And so he rolled it with a paint roller, dry, a close nap paint roller, rolled it smooth against the grill, and then he climbed back down the ladder, and the string was hanging down towards the floor. So when he's done with the test, he could just grab this string and pull down the saran wrap without having to
go
set
up
the
there
ladder again. And I was just like, yeah, that's why, like this guy does this every day.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And like I never would have thought of something like that unless I had to do this.
Cool.
Yeah, those are the kinds of things that for years and years and years people would write in for tips for the magazine.
Yeah.
It's like that's what makes the difference between someone who's just out there just going to work, punching a clock, and someone who's out there trying to make their job easier and better every single day.
Yep. And it was cool just to kind of watch him go through the checklist before starting, walking through, physically putting his hand on every single window to make sure
It's
it was closed
closed,
and
yeah.
locked, and all the doors, and like systematically running clockwise through the house to make sure he checked all the flues, all the appliances.
Turned off all the fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was cool.
That's very cool.
I didn't stick around long enough to see what the HERS rating ended up at. But
So is this house forced air heat, or does it have hydronic heat with air conditioning? So like what's the ductwork for, I guess is what I'm asking.
I didn't go down in the basement. I think they said it's a boiler. So it must be two separate systems. We didn't get too far into it because they're ripping it all out and replacing it with mini split systems. So it was kind of a comical test of the ductwork because they're not going to use it, but you have to do it in order to get a HERS rating.
Yeah, that you're making this improvement.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the low interest loans are hinged on getting that initial baseline reading on the house.
Right.
Tell me, when will this content start making its way onto our website?
We don't have a definite set date, but it'll probably be late February or March 1st area.
Cool.
Time.
So-
yeah. And it's going to be really cool. We're going to follow the job like on a semi-weekly basis, like really being in there, talking to the builders, talking to the different tradespeople, and kind of bringing to life what it looks like to do a deep energy retrofit.
Cool.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So we also heard from Sean. We've been having this ongoing discussion of how to make a living with a handyman business. Like it's very difficult to charge enough to have a good living and pay your bills and be a successful business person. So we heard from Sean on this. He says, handyman work is a huge part of my business. I charge by the job and not by the hour because potential clients balk at the hourly rate. You guys mentioned the gig economy and businesses or apps that match small jobs to contractors. Home Advisor, Handy, and others are platforms that homeowners can use to post or request that jobs be done. Largely, these companies and businesses aren't worth it as they make their money by charging fees to the contractor per lead or pay the contractor very low wages as a subcontractor. Take Handy, for example, which I've experience with. I included a few screenshots of their app, but the prices that they will pay to do things are 1/3 or less than what I would actually charge to do them. I've done a few things with them that fall directly in my wheelhouse or when I needed money for gas so I could make it to estimates and jobs that actually pay real money. They don't provide the contractor with much information, and you cannot contact the customer until 24 hours before the job is scheduled to start. In short, those services have a place in the market, but will never be as good as going directly to a handyman business that does everything in-house. So, Justin, you want to give a little rundown of what the jobs are available on the screenshot he sent us?
Well, we're seeing a screenshot of this guy's phone, and he's got There's 2 entries for furniture assembly.
That's the total price? We're not talking an hourly price here. See, I was thinking it was an hourly price.
Well, it's for an hour of work. It looks like
okay.
One of them is an hour. One of them's an hour and a half, and it's $20 and $30. So it's $10. $10 difference.
That's horrible.
$20 an hour. Yeah, it's
$20
awful.
to drive to someone's house to put their cheap furniture together. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean that's no way.
No way.
Well,
Also, this guy only has 10% battery life left on his phone while taking the screenshot, which I'm a little.
Does it make you anxious?
It makes me anxious. Yeah, Andy's listening to music. I can tell by the headphone icon there.
That's
so
hilarious. I had no idea. I mean, how can you make a living doing this?
you can.
well,
It
this
wouldn't even
must,
pay
you know,
for your gas to get there.
I mean, I think first of all, a lot of these apps only originally existed in cities where people are close together, and there's probably just a lot of people who just want to make some extra money. They're not necessarily targeting professional handymen as their
you're
subs,
thinking
you know?
that this is like targeted to this person's neighbor, not like a professional tradesperson.
Yeah, I know a guy who lived in the city, and I forget what business he did, but he had his regular line of work was nothing related to fixing or being a handyman or anything like that, and he just picked up stuff like this just to make some extra cash.
Right. I mean, it could be if you had nothing else for the day. I guess maybe. But also think about it from the homeowner's point of view, who wants their IKEA furniture put together. Do you want to pay more than $30?
No,
I don't either. I don't. What does IKEA charge?
I don't know.
I mean, I think they do some of that too, don't they?
They do, and they will probably help you get someone else to install it or assemble it also.
The sad thing for me is that people out there might be getting their only fix in terms of putting something together in their life by building IKEA furniture. And as a builder, I could tell you that's one of the most frustrating experiences of building that you'll ever have. So
You think it'd be easier for them to like build a garage, for
Yes.
example?
Yes.
Certainly more satisfying.
Yeah.
That is wonderful, Sean. Thank you very much. Anyone else out there who has experience doing this kind of work and making a business of it, we'd love to hear from you. Ryan from Attleboro, Massachusetts wrote in, afternoon, guys, just finished listening to episode 216, and I can sympathize with Matt and his lack of a light switch, ugly as heck ceiling fan situation. We recently bought a house with a similar thing going on, and I'd like to fill you in on my solution. I found the amount of work necessary versus the reward of adding new switches difficult to justify, so I installed some smart lighting fixtures and then Philips Hue bulbs and switches. Yes, there are other smart bulbs on the market, but Hue won out on our house for a number of reasons. Number one, color. Patrick and his concern for color temperature of LED bulbs is mostly a thing of the past, as many manufacturers now offer them in multiple temperatures. White is a traditional soft color. White ambiance gets a warm white, and white in color is the Hue bulb you're likely familiar with that offers 16 million colors or something silly like that. We opted for the white ambiance so we can adapt the color for the time of day and use the space warm, soft white light in the kitchen at night and cool white light while cooking dinner.
You know, on that note of the color, I've noticed that a lot of those LED replacement inserts or some of those thin LED can
Fixtures,
light fixtures, they actually have a switch on the side for 5 different color temperatures. So it's not even you have to buy the one you want. If you don't like it, you pop the thing out and you flip the little switch and change it to the one you want.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
So do you have any of these LED fixtures?
I have LED lights on my porch.
And
Yep.
what do you think? Is it good color?
They're great. I mean, I like the LED just because I don't have to feel as insane about flipping the switch on and off. You know, it's just like
Because it's so energy efficient, you don't feel bad
there's
about
almost
leaving
no
it
penalty, Yeah, one of my LED lights actually stopped working though, which is a bummer because I haven't fixed it yet. It's not, oh, I need to go change that bulb. It's I have to replace
the
that
fixture,
and then it becomes, does that one match the other 3 that are still working? So that's one thing to keep in mind there. I mean, the failure rate, I think I must have just gotten some kind of a fluke because I've had other LED fixtures that seem to last forever, you know?
Yeah, when they first hit the market, they were not getting the kind of lifespan consistently that I think they claimed, but I feel like they've certainly come a long way.
It could be also that like a squirrel chewed through the wire or something, I don't know.
Yep.
Maybe a roof leak.
I did previously have a squirrel living on my porch roof too. The porch is my bane of my existence, in case you can't tell.
So one of my old coworkers told me one time that porches are how carpenters stay in and work, right? If you didn't have porches, you wouldn't have any work to do.
Yeah, but I mean, they're so much better than decks. But let's not go down that path.
So Ryan also talks about these switches that are RF or electronic in some way that don't use line voltage to turn the fixture on and off. We already talked about in the last episode.
I want to get some of those. That's cool.
It's very cool. He says the smart bulbs are also a great way to step foot into a smart home without going overboard. You can make sure your lights are off when you've left the house, or turn the lights on when you get home. Many of the smart manufacturers also offer vacation mode that will cycle the lights on and off when you're not there. Thanks for your time, and thank you for the podcast. I look forward to listening all the time.
Do you guys know who in the world of tradesmen is handling the smart home technology in what you've
low
seen?
voltage people?
It's not the electrician.
Well, they have to do it too.
Right.
And I think some electricians welcome that work, and some others want nothing to do with
Yeah,
it.
because I have no interest in it.
I find it very disinteresting too.
Yeah.
There's definitely some people. I went to that. It was a home show in Millbrook, New York, last year sometime, and there's some electrician who has this business. It's called Joe's TV or something like that. I looked at this tiny old business up in that area that you'd think was like an old TV repair shop. He's hung on to the old name of the business, but that's one of the main things he specializes in. It's he loves to get into building smart homes.
Yeah.
And so he
Stereo geeks, those
Yeah.
guys. They just found a new outlet.
Yeah.
Smart home stuff. Yeah, it's I mean, I could see it being a booming market. As a contractor, you definitely want somebody you could call who could just take care of it for you instead of you having to become an expert in it, because it's changing so fast.
And it's stuff you're not generally dealing with, electronic shades, for example, and HVAC equipment and stuff
Yeah.
So do you have to become an expert in all those very specialized sub trades to make this stuff work?
Right.
So you guys aren't afraid of those B horror movies, the smart home takes over your house and traps you and hunts
Yes.
you down.
I-
I have none of that stuff, so I'm not worried. Except Amazon might, come through my phone someday to get me.
Through Alexa?
I don't have Alexa, but I do have the app on my phone, and I use the Google.
Do you have one of those things in your house?
Yeah, I have Alexa.
Yeah.
What do you use it for?
Pretty much.
I must have hit a nerve.
I mean, it's pretty much I use it for a number of things. One, I like to sometimes, as I'm leaving the door in the morning, ask Alexa to play a Spice Girls song so that my wife is stuck listening to it while I leave. But other times it's honestly just really stupid stuff, like asking it the weather today, or something that randomly pops into your mind, when was the Civil War? Oh, I think it was this date or that. And it's mostly it settles arguments in my house.
That's what I use my Google voice recognition thing to do.
Yeah.
It's who I ask everything.
But I don't have to get off the couch to do this, and I don't have to have my phone on the
Right.
couch.
Right.
See-
So did you buy the mini, or did you buy the, I don't know what the
I
bigger
don't
one's
know
called?
what it is.
The dot or whatever. The little one's the dot. My somebody bought one of those for us for Christmas a couple of years ago, and we had it for a few months, and then we got creeped out and unplugged it.
Do you have one, Jeff?
Yeah.
What do you do with it?
A lot of the same kind of stuff as Justin.
Try the Spice
Ask it
Girls.
questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in the kitchen, so we use it for kitchen timer all the time.
Oh, cool.
Does math.
Yes.
So it's easy, 100. What's 152 times 26?
Yes, we've started using it for that too. That
Really?
is helpful.
It can figure that out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do
yeah.
it, and it doesn't, do it laboriously. It just gives you the answer. It's quick.
That's pretty cool.
So
No, show your work. No.
one thing you guys will have to try if you haven't is just say to Alexa, let's chat. And it turns on, it randomly selects one of hundreds of these university or research center based AI experimental programs where it tries to have a conversation with you, and at the end it asks you, you have to actually stop it. It will just keep going and going and going.
That sounds fun.
And it's some of them are pretty good and some of them are pretty weird and they're all kind of creepy, and
It's just like having a conversation with someone at the airport, though. You never know how it's going to start.
Yeah.
Is this an intelligent person or?
Headphones, everybody. Put headphones on.
So you wanted to talk about something that we did on the Facebook Fine Homebuilding page. We asked folks, what is something you know is wrong, but you see over and over again on the job site anyway?
yeah. So we've been trying to ask more questions like this on Facebook just to spark conversations, and also to to feed our ideas
And
for what
to
we,
amuse us.
Yeah, and amuse us. To feel like we're part of the gang or something. But yeah, we got something almost 100 comments on that post.
It's
but,
one of the best performing Facebook posts ever, right?
Yeah,
with regard to comments.
Yeah. So we just pulled a couple of them out of there, and I don't know, a guy by the name of Steve Andrews said crappy framing. Basically, but here,
And he
watch
wasn't
this.
the only one.
Yeah, but this one was interesting. He said once he saw a piece of rebar through the slab at the base of a wall, and the finishers left it. The framers notched the sill around it. The drywall hangers notched the drywall around it. And then finally, the trim carpenters notched the baseboard around it, and it wasn't until the cabinet installer came in and took a sawzall and cut the thing out.
Wow. That's unreal.
So I've seen that meme on...
Really?
Yeah. And
You think?
I don't know, but...
I don't know. That's what he said. Take his word on it. But anyway, one of the framing was definitely a big one, because one guy said if there's one single item that boosts the quality and morale on a project more than the other, is starting from a good framing job.
Yeah, because everything else is screwed up afterward if you have a bad frame. Like, everything.
One thing, we talk about this, you and Matt talk about this a little more than I do, because I probably don't pay attention to these things as much as I should, but inadequate or incorrect nailing schedules on plywood or built-up beams or stuff like that. Like, how many people do you think actually look into that stuff before and pay attention to the details?
I think it's more nails the better is what a lot of people default to.
Yeah.
When in doubt.
When I was a kid, my dad would hang drywall, and I think there was more weight in nails than there was in drywall.
Good for him. So in some applications, you guys would both agree, I'm sure, it really matters, like shear walls and other structural elements. Like, that stuff's very important, and someone should be checking.
Yeah.
Are too many fasteners a bad thing?
If it starts splitting the material, it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, like, imagine nailing down a roof rafter, and you're toenailing into it. If you put 3 toenails versus 10...
Yeah.
10, there's not much wood integrity left.
Yeah. And how many people who have remodeled a house have not seen a buried electrical junction?
Yeah, that's
I buried a few myself.
perennial favorite.
One guy brought up drip edge right against the fascia, and I was actually talking about this with Rodney, our art director.
I've always put it right against the fascia.
As opposed to just like kind of
leaving a gap, I guess.
The thing is, if drip edge is made with that little kick out at the bottom,
right.
So you think that does all the work. But one other good reason, and this came up with Rodney's discussion about trimming up like fascia boards, is that if you're trying to put material against material and one of them is out of alignment a little bit, each layer shows it off more. Where I think that if you run the sheathing a tiny bit long, you got your drip edge a little bit out from the fascia board, you won't have this kinked piece of drip edge running down the
It allows you
house.
to create a straight line where there might not be a straight line.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like a place where bees are going to make a nest.
I think leaving it off a little bit in retrospect makes a lot of sense, because it makes it easier to paint instead of having to cut in tight to that aluminum piece. You have that little gap to get the brush in there.
And we're not talking a half an inch gap here. We're talking like just so it's not touching, basically.
Like 3 or 4 inches.
It's because the same the same reason why an old wooden sill has that little kerf in the bottom of it. It's creating a break so that
Capillary break, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about. So in the last episode, we heard from, that would be number 225, Bill from Colorado, asked if he could use smaller nails to fasten the bottom plate on his workshop to an I-joist floor system. So he sent me this detailed drawing.
Smaller nails.
Yeah, so...
Smaller than what?
So that's the question here. So the truss joist drawing specifies a 0.135-inch diameter nail. But all gun nails are 0.131. So he said, can I use the 0.131? And so I was like, at first I was like, well, this is just a shopping exercise. You need to just find thicker nails from whatever manufacturer and use them. Well, so I went looking. I could not find any. You can find thicker nails, but they start at 4 inches. And that's a problem if you have an I-joist, because you don't want the nails to go through the flange, right?
Right.
So I called up Truss Joist, and I talked to Brent.
Hold on a second. Is it a problem for them to go through the flange because they're going to? It's going to be a degrade the performance, or is it a?
I just don't think you're supposed to do that.
Okay.
Trust Joist could answer that better, but anyway, so I called them up, and I what's cool about that company is like someone picks up the phone at tech support.
Yeah.
And Brent picked up, and he's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know where those dimensions come from. So he's like, I'll call you back, and he did. But it was after we recorded the show, so
Yeah.
I wanted to report back what I learned from him.
All right.
So that 135-inch diameter nail comes from the IRC table R602, which
I love table R602.
it tells you every nail you're supposed to use for every common house connection, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what it says for the sole plate to the floor.
I have a tattoo of this on my back.
And so are these based on old hand nails?
So this is based on a box nail, not even
Yeah.
a common nail, which is even weirder than a common nail. But so here's the secret to all of this, is that most nail gun manufacturers, or the three I looked up, have what are described as ICCES reports. That means that they've tested their nails and they have found them to be equivalent to these values or better. So you just...
And we're also only talking about 4/1000th of an inch here, right, in diameter?
Okay, and that's a valid point, and all of us sitting here realize that this is not really going to make a difference in the real world, right? But if you have somebody who's paying attention to this,
Right.
you're going to be in trouble, right? You just can't deviate from the detail.
We also don't know that it makes no difference in the real world.
That's true.
It just depends on how far you want to zoom in and look at the data. I mean, we look at big stuff because we deal in big stuff, but to a engineer or a machinist, that's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and Mike Gerton pointed out a good thing in the summit when he was talking about materials and instructions, in that a lot of, it's actually interesting that they have such a detailed requirement, because a lot of manufacturers will shy away from giving too much detail because you're talking about material compatibility, different materials, different manufacturers are providing the fastener compared to the joist. But obviously a thing like an engineered joist has to have pretty specific requirements, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
And they're counting on you doing a very specific installation, a very specific system of products for it to achieve the performance they're speccing for you.
And the code enforcement is also expecting Trust Joist to do the testing and develop an assembly that works, that they can then field verify, right?
Right.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the ICCES. So the International Code Council, the same entity that develops our model building codes, right, also has a part of its business, and I don't know if it's a business in the conventional sense, as in like it's trying to make money for shareholders, but they test products in their lab, and if they have this ICCES number, which is an evaluation service, code enforcement officers can look to that and say, yeah, this is a bona fide product that can be used in this application. So.
Right. So for a good example of that would be like the code might say that for a weather-resistant barrier, you need to have a equivalent to a Type D building paper.
Based on ASTM.
And you're not going to find Tyvek in the code, but you look to Tyvek and they have an ICCES report that says our product is equivalent in performance to the thing the code wants.
Yep.
So you can use it.
And ICCES is not the only entity that does this kind of service. I think it's a safer bet for manufacturers because they're the same ones who write the code body. And I would assume that the people who write the code body would recognize their own entity as a reliable source for evaluating this stuff. Mm-hmm. Very interesting, right?
It's really complicated to be a builder these days with the materials and the. I mean, you have to do a lot of digging just to make sure you're using the right stuff.
If you care about it, or if you're even aware of it, if you're even aware of the need for it.
To that point, Brent, who told me he had been at Trust Joist a long time, said, "I'm really surprised. I've never had this question before."
Yeah.
So apparently, Bill is smarter than most of us.
It's a low bar.
Let's get to a question before we run out of time, but this has been a great show so far. Hey, FHB crew, when my wife and I bought our house about a year ago, I saw a crack in the beam holding up the porch roof. My wife wondered if we would have to repair it, and I told her it would be fine.
Porches again.
The truth is, I'm not really sure. I'm just going by eye. Are there any guidelines you can offer for splits, cracks, knots, notches, holes, etc., on how to repair them?
Yeah,
I think this is Justin's question because he's the king of the old creaky porches.
What does a crack mean? Like, is it a check mark?
I believe so. I asked for a photograph, but I've yet to receive that. Hopefully, we'll have one in time for by the time this is published on our website.
I mean, I heard someone asking a similar question recently about timber frame structures. It was like, when a timber frame dries, it gets cracks. And some of them may be a problem and some of them may not be.
Right. I mean, the thing is, it's not going to, for something like this, it's not going to be a catastrophic failure. Like you're going to be having a glass of lemonade and the entire porch is going to collapse on you.
It seems unlikely.
It's going to, I guess I shouldn't say for sure.
Yeah. We got to see the crack before we make that distinction.
But I mean, if you're looking at, let's say it's a 2x10 and you're looking at the side of it and you see in the center height of the 2x10, you see a crack that runs horizontally and it begins and ends in solid wood, it might be a good indication that it's just drying out and cracking, right? Probably not that big of a deal. If the crack is running diagonally up from the bottom edge
to the top,
yeah, like
that's a big problem.
Like a knot that opened up or something like that.
Right, like
yeah.
I have a floor joist in my house that it's an old joist and it has a knot in the middle of it somewhere and it has cracked from the knot down to the bottom and it is open up. Like you can see the joist is failing.
Sagging. Yeah.
And that's the important point is, throw a level up there. Is the crack translate to something actually happening? Can you tell that it's no longer level? Now it's starting to bow down because then you get a sense of it moving. Where it gets more complicated is the movement stopped? Like it's cracked and it's settled and it's done. Like this gets really hard in old houses.
Right.
Like this roof is really sagging. Should I worry about it? And it's like, no, it finished sagging 150 years ago.
Right.
And it's done now.
And it's so easy with digital cameras, smartphones to take pictures of things. It's
see how they progress.
Hold up a tape measure up there every once in a while and take a picture of it and document it.
If what I suspect is true, which this is like a timber framed element, checks in large
Very
timber
normal.
is just going to happen because you have this big hunk of wood and it's losing moisture and the cells shrink and they crack.
Yep.
So
yeah, so as long as it's not coming from the side and through a significant portion of the cross section of the timber, I would say that it's probably normal.
And I think it's safe to tell your wife it's just fine.
That's always fun.
Dear FHB folks, what would you have done in this situation or what would you suggest at this late date? In 2015/16, a reputable contractor built a house for us. Somehow, a rough-in inspection was not done, which we learned during the final inspection. At that point, the inspector said the only permit sticker that could be issued was a yellow one versus green, indicating that no rough-in inspection was done. I also received a letter from the electrical commissioner saying that I needed to inform my insurance agent and any prospective buyers of this status.
I never heard of this.
Neither have I. In the analysis of how this happened, we learned that according to long practice, the contractor notified the inspector of the rough-in readiness, waited a week or so, and then went forward with further construction. Although we did see documentation of this notification, the inspection was not done, nor even attempted, and no rough-in permit was posted. That inspector has since found other employment. Clearly, there was some culpability for the contractor and our electrician for not realizing no rough-in inspection was done. There was lots of finger pointings, but the EC prevailed. So what the heck? Why was the electrical contractor not following up to get his rough-in inspection before this GC closed up everything? That's unconscionable. That's their job.
This is a tricky one.
Yeah. When we tried to organize a forensic rough-in inspection, we provided dozens of pictures taken of the walls open, specifically showing electrical elements. I had these taken during construction for future reference.
Right.
Our basement is drop ceiling, so all the electrical to and from the main box is exposed for inspection.
Yep.
We used a remote camera to look at wires in the walls that were covered. All of this made no difference to the opinion of the inspector and the electrical commissioner, who was also involved, as to the lack of rough-in inspection. So they saw this, but they don't care. They're like, it's still, it doesn't matter.
We're not signing off on this.
So, we've got technology now that keeps changing the way we do stuff like this. And this actually is an idea that wasn't initially for this, but is related to this. Jess, our other web editor, she was poking around on her Instagram feed, and somebody had posted a video that they got this Matterport service to do, and they're mostly contract to high-end realtors to do these 3D walkthroughs, almost like Google Street View in houses to show off houses. Well, this company was using this when they had the house framed and sheathed so that once the insulation and drywall was up, they would be able to know exactly where every single pipe and wire was in that house. Maybe this is something that...
Yeah, but I mean, from what Patrick's saying, it sounds like they wouldn't have bought that.
This inspector didn't care.
Yeah.
So in conclusion here, so we still have a yellow sticker on our breaker box and a letter from the EC detailing our obligations to notify. We have notified our insurance agent and it will not be any impact to our rates or coverage.
Okay.
Although we don't plan to sell in the foreseeable future, we are not comfortable with the implication of the yellow sticker, the dreaded yellow sticker.
Just pull it off and throw it away.
What might we have done or could still do to resolve this, short of opening up all the walls for a traditional rough-in inspection? Is there really no room for negotiation in a matter like this?
I have never heard of this situation, never mind have an answer for it. I mean, this is one of those, too, where it's like...
I mean, this is one of those things where it's like, one, it's good to have a good relationship with your local building officials, and two, sometimes you're just going to get some people that are set in their ways, and this is the way it is.
Okay,
so taking the perspective of the electrical inspector,
Yep.
Who's on the hook if some fire breaks out in this house?
That's true.
You know,
So I just want to timeline this out. So the electrician comes in and he does his rough-in. He alerts the general contractor or right to the inspector
electrical
himself
inspector, right?
and says, electrical rough-in's done, ready for an inspection. It made it sound like the GC got in touch and said, hey, we're ready for an inspection. Maybe I read it, maybe you read it, or I heard it wrong. And then he said he gave it a week and then just proceeded.
Yeah.
So
waited a week or so. Yeah.
That's just wrong.
I mean,
you just cannot do that.
I don't know if I can blame the electrician for that or the general contractor who is not supposed to continue going forward.
Right.
I mean, the electrician doesn't have control over whether you go
Start
ahead and
hanging
put drywall up.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But the GC should have waited until he had his rough-in
I
inspection.
mean, I wouldn't have finished that electrical job. I'd been like, you never got the permit for me to finish this. I'm done.
You mean
easy to say,
to do the trim out?
Yeah.
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 Well, that's when you get all your money. So I mean,
know. Yeah.
So I think the GC made a cataclysmic mistake in covering up these wires, right?
Yeah.
I think the only way to solve this for a resale is you have all these pictures that document that it was done correctly, and you would just have to show them that, look, this is why we have the yellow sticker. There was this mix-up. If you want to, we'll help you pay for an engineer or a third-party electrical inspection and using these as documentation that the work was done correctly. You might find someone to go along with that, or you might not, but I do think it would put the seller's or the buyer's mind at ease if you could have some backup that this was done correctly.
Right. But it is going to be a hiccup.
It's
probably.
a hiccup.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine as a experienced contractor moving forward without an inspection.
Unless they have
that.
like 70 houses going at once. Just drop the ball. I don't know. Things happen.
That's and like you said, if you're managing a bunch of projects, stuff easily falls through the cracks.
Yeah, it could be, maybe he thought somebody did come out and sign off on it.
Or, the drywall contractor asked someone on the job site, so you guys ready for drywall? And without knowing all the pieces that need to go into that, yes, we're ready, or no, we're not. If they said yes and they didn't have all the things together.
Right. Oh, we're planning on coming on Monday. Are you going to have the rough-in inspection done by then? Yeah, we'll have it done. And then they show up on Monday and start.
Right.
So we shouldn't even blame the GC necessarily.
Yeah, but he's got to know that.
It is on him in terms of responsibility.
He's got to know that.
Yeah.
This comes from Justin from New Jersey. Good afternoon. I absolutely love the show and the magazine. I've been stressing about this upcoming project, and I want to make sure I do it right. My house is a split level, built in 1960, and poorly insulated. My wife and I have our first child on the way in May, and I wanted to convert the garage to have more living space. No worries, the workshop is going in the basement, he wants us to know.
Good. I feel better already.
I want to insulate the garage the best way I can, and I was thinking of a double wall, but I am concerned with vapor permeability. It is a slab-on-grade garage with three sides of the garage being exterior walls. The walls are 8 feet tall with blocks going halfway up and the remainder standard 2x4 construction. The layers of the wall go from exterior cement shingles, felt paper, half-inch plywood sheathing, and then 2x4s. My thought was to put up a 2-inch thick XPS foam board in the cavities and seal them with canned spray foam. Then I would build a double wall, which I need to cover the cinder block and then fill it in with blown cellulose. I keep reading differing opinions on vapor permeability and condensation building up inside of the plywood. My thought is to have 2 inches of XPX that would stop any moisture from building up. I have not seen any water damage on the inside of the wall, and the garage stays dry. The main wall is facing northeast, and I'm in climate zone 5. Lastly, what is the minimum thickness of rigid foam you would install on the floor?
So give me the summary wall assembly.
Existing or planned?
Planned, proposed.
Okay.
He's going to fill the cavities.
He's got
With 2 inches XPS.
He's got 2x4 walls
Yeah.
with plywood sheathing right now.
Yeah.
And he's going to fill 2-inch XPS.
For dew point control.
Yep.
And he's going to build a second wall interior to cover up the block,
Yep.
and then fill all of this with cellulose, is what I gather.
Well, you don't need the foam then. Why not just make it so it dries to both sides?
I think he's making this overly complicated in a number of ways.
Yeah. I mean, if you put the foam, yeah. The thing is, though, I mean, if you're going to do a double stud wall filled with cellulose and you're worried about condensation in the middle of the wall, I mean, having your siding on furring strips is going to be
Hugely helpful.
So that factors in here.
I agree.
So,
And he's building what amounts to a super high performance in a room in a house that's not.
yeah.
You can't make part of a house super high performance and expect it to perform much different than the rest of the house.
Yeah, and that's only a half wall of block. I mean, if this was me, I would insulate the cavities, the stud bays, whatever you want. I mean, rigid foam is great. You can put it in there, get a relatively nice fit. I like to leave like a 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch on either side or a 1/4 inch on either side so I can foam it. And I know there's a place for the expansion foam to go in.
Yeah, so you're not like applying on the surface; it's actually going in a gap.
Or make it a tighter fit and caulk it, whatever you want to do. And then for the block wall, I would do the same thing that I would do in a basement: is just make a half wall out of it, which is really handy to have in a shop because now you have a ledge all around the whole place.
That's where your battery chargers go.
Yeah, exactly. You need to collect sawdust somewhere, and for that block, you can just put foam board. Frame a wall in front of the block essentially, fill that with rigid foam the same, so you're warming up that cold concrete, preventing condensation that way, and then you just skin it with whatever, paneling, drywall, something that's gonna
But now cover
it up for you.
You keep talking shop. The shop's going in the basement. This is going to be living space.
Sorry. Same deal though, because it's just like finishing a basement.
Yeah.
So my assembly in my house in Stowe, the basement living space was just like this.
Yeah.
So what I did is I put XPS on the block part of the wall with horizontal furring strips.
Yep.
I furred out the stud wall so they were in the same plane, which gave me an extra deep insulation cavity. Filled it all with bats and drywalled the whole wall in one plane because having those jogs in the wall makes drywall finishing so much bigger pain in the butt.
Well,
Yeah.
and he was saying he was going to do a double stud wall. So, I mean, he's going to do a continuous wall as far as I can tell on the inside anyway.
So, I mean, I would question that because I don't think you need to do that, but I would just make the wall, 1.5 inches or 2 inches thick on, of XPS with the drywall directly on that on furring strips cut into notches, right?
Yeah. See, I've avoided the step drywall, which I mean, arguably, it's not that complicated of a drywall detail, but you can cover it with paneling on the bottom and just do a wooden shelf.
Yep.
I mean, that's a pretty common basement move. And the foam is giving you your air seal under there, so you could just put paneling right over the furring strips and not have to worry about it being leaky in terms of airflow.
Cool thing that I've seen people use and I've used a little in the past myself is called GP's ply bead, which is a beaded plywood, and it makes a really good wainscoting material, especially for a basement playroom where the kids are going to be rough on the walls, and you can also put build-ins and stuff and have something easy to fasten to.
Right. I mean, that's going to be a safer wall assembly. It's going to be easier for you to build, and like Patrick said, creating one super insulated room inside of
A normal house.
Yeah, it's not going to give you the bang for the buck that you think it's going to, unless it's like I'm going to remodel my whole house and I'm starting here.
Yep.
And then it's like okay.
Yep.
But so he also asked about how much foam on the floor.
1.5 inches.
I would say yeah.
Minimum 1.5 inches, yeah. 2 maybe, but 1.5 inches in most places is going to prevent your concerns about condensation on the cold surface.
And don't put carpet in there, please. Right.
Well, he's going to have to do something over the foam. So you're thinking 1.5 inches foam and then opposing layers of 1/2 inch plywood or something like that?
Something like that. I don't know what the budget is, but
In the past, I've done 1 inch on the floor. I'm trying to remember what we... Was it 2 inches back when
What?
Andy did that article on
yeah. So he's in New Jersey, so I
Why
mean
no
that's.
carpet, Patrick?
I'm sorry.
Why no carpet?
I'm sorry. Mold loves the hanging out in basement carpet.
Oh, no, but you keep calling it a basement. He's talking about the garage.
Still
It's in the
cold there.
basement.
Okay.
I mean, did you see the house?
Yeah.
Did you see the front of the house, Jeff? So I'd call that the basement.
Okay.
That window in the front.
It's a cute house. Boy, they are like super taking care of it. It's like everything is perfect.
Have you ever seen concrete that was that clean?
It looks great. And it's perfectly painted. It's, like someone cares. You can
I
tell.
think he photoshopped it.
Looks nice. I don't know if he realizes like how the project schedule is going to change in May.
I think he's going to have to finish this.
He's going to have to get cracking on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are your projects coming, by the way?
Pretty good. I did some bathroom work, redid my shower, and
Is that done now? Because last time you were on, we talked about that.
yeah, it's done now. Yep.
Done.
Done.
No punch list of any sort.
Well, no, there's punch list.
I had to ask because there always is.
There needs to be a deep clean, to get that last little bit of grout haze out of the corners and things like that. And I need to the drywall in the shower area, the shower nook is all finished, but it's not primed and painted yet. So I guess it needs a very light sanding. I always like to do drywall as absolutely smooth as possible, so I don't really have to do much sanding.
Yep. Who doesn't?
Well, a lot of people just go with the.
I'll sand it away.
Yeah, I'll goop it on and then sand it smooth, which is just like a nightmare to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyone who's had to sand someone else's bad drywall
Yeah.
gets that immediately.
Yeah.
What kind of grout did you use in there?
I just use regular, for the floor. No, I use non-sanded. Yeah, it was
Cementatious.
I think it was Mapai was the grout brand I used. I used non-sanded cementitious grout, except for where I accidentally bought a bag of sanded that I used on the walls in the general bathroom area. The half wall subway tile wainscot, and that was just by mistake. But
Does it look different?
no, it just felt different when I was putting it on, and that's when I
Interesting.
realized. Yeah, my highly tuned tiling skills picked up on it immediately, Patrick.
I'm sure. You could just tell by the subtle difference in
Yes.
feel. Yes.
Yeah.
And one final question here is actually for you all listening. So, Jeff from North Carolina wrote in and said, in a discussion on the latest episode, Patrick made a brief comment about having hard water. This was related to my discussion of blowing up my toilet. And I don't know if you've heard that one yet.
I have not heard that,
yeah.
but I just put in a water softener, so this is near and dear to my heart too.
Okay.
I was really shocked to hear that episode. He and Matt were here by themselves over Christmas break, and they just laid it all on the line and basically showed how smart they were in a couple of their remodeling projects.
I would describe it as problem solving is how I would sum it up. Yeah. Anyway, so Patrick made a brief comment about having hard water. We recently had our well water tested, and the hardness score was a 10. Does that mean it's perfect?
Yeah, 10 what? Because I thought you measured it in parts per million.
Well, so it's
or
10 grains per something.
grains per gallon.
Okay. Yeah, so it's that. And so that's super hard. Like
Yeah.
that's
Ultra hard.
I think the chart stops at 10.
Okay.
Can you elaborate a little more on the effects of hard water in a home? Yeah, it'll plug up your toilet. And maybe comment on what point it makes sense to invest in a water softening system. So
It makes sense to invest in a water softening system when your wife starts complaining that she can't rinse the soap out of her hair.
Yeah.
yeah, or your dishes have a residue that doesn't go away.
Yeah, there's like there's some question about whether it makes sense when you have like a 3 or 4 on that scale. You have a 10, you should be going to get a water softener like as you're hearing me speak the sentence.
So please tell me what you got and what the experience was like, and did you do it yourself?
Oh, I love doing plumbing projects, so I did it myself for sure. It's like adult Legos putting together PEX and PVC tubing and,
You must have better plumbing tools than I do.
Oh, it's so good.
So I'm still in like sweating copper and,
Really?
Yeah.
Sweating copper was fun, too. I did some of that.
Yep.
I think it's a GE is what I have, and it's
From one of the box stores.
And I went from knowing nothing about this to having to
Figure it out.
research it. How much? What do I need? What is the grain per gallon? What's the size I need for the house? How often do I have to put it in? What kind of salt do I put in?
Tell me
How does it operate?
how did you test your water to know that you needed this?
I sent away for like a little kit of little test strips that you can just dunk under the water, and they tell you
So, in reaching this conversation or this discussion yesterday, I found those on Amazon. Didn't know they existed. So,
they're like $2 or something, right? Or $5.
well, the ones I saw had like 100, and they were 100 test strips, and they were 10, or you could get 100 better ones for 20. Was what I was looking
I'm sure I get the $10 ones.
So the more expensive ones like measure for more chemicals in the water or minerals or whatever
right.
things, lead and copper
Yes.
and other stuff.
Yeah. So I did this. I put in the water softener, which was just a matter of I wanted to minimize the downtime of the house. So I got everything. I got all the connections made to the water softener in and out, and all the fittings figured out and everything. And I had all the PEX tubing going to where I needed to tie it in, so that when the time came, all I did was shut off the whole house water, cut the pipe, connect it on both in and out, and then turn the water back on. So the water was off for like 6 minutes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty satisfying. And I've also put in a whole house filter at the same time.
Tell me about that.
It's just a kind of one of
A
those,
sediment filter.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's some question in my plumbing, how much is rust and that kind of problem, and how much is hard water. And a water softener doesn't according to some adequately take care of problems with iron in your water. I mean, it will kind of it supposedly helps, but it's not.
So what I've learned about this is the hard water is dissolved calcium and magnesium. Yeah. Iron is a different problem. It's rust from pipes.
Right.
Largely in municipal systems, because they have old rusty pipes.
Right. And that's what I have. I don't have well water.
And some folks have rusty water from their galvanized pipes if your house is of the right vintage, right? So you can buy salt that helps reduce the iron staining, but that's secondary to its primary job, which is to precipitate out the dissolved magnesium and calcium.
Right. It's not even that the salt is purifying your water. All the salt is being used for is flushing out the thing that's filtering the water.
And they call it resin beads, right?
Yeah, the resin beads. It's like, it looks like a big fiberglass scuba tank sort of thing.
So these things come in like single tank versions and 2-tank versions. The single tank versions, the downside is like you can't be using water when they're recharging. This process where the beads are cleaned with the salt.
Yep.
But people schedule that to happen in the middle of the night where they're not drawing water anyway.
Right.
So did you get the 2-tank version that you can draw water while the thing is doing its job?
No. So what it looks like is essentially that fiberglass tank inside of a big plastic rectangular hopper that you fill with the salt. So it's an all-in-one kind of a unit, and it has the digital timing, and it does have a bypass mode, so you can bypass it for whatever reason if you need to. If you need to use
ran
water
out of
while
salt.
Yeah, exactly. But it does. You can change the schedule of when it's going to clean itself. It tells you in a digital readout how many days until you need to refill it again. It's pretty nice.
And how much did this cost?
I want to say it was
$400 or $500.
It was lost amid a lot of purchases, but I think it was 300, 400, something like that.
Okay.
And I think I got a 30,000 capacity, and they're all over the map. But that's kind of a middle of the road size.
So like the more expensive ones will deal with harder water, and like if you have water that's not quite as hard, you can get one of the lesser expensive ones.
It's basically like the capacity, its ability to
get out the minerals.
But I imagine you could easily approach the cost of the unit itself and all the like bypass valves and connectors and filter and all those other things that you want to add to it. I mean, did you put, because it's easy enough to just hook something like that up in line in your full water system, but I imagine if maybe you put some extra thought into it and added like a bypass loop to go around it, or not so, because it
has that built in.
Yeah.
So they have a series of valves where they connect to the water supply, and you can bypass it without it. It comes on there.
Right. You can
but I just meant like, sometimes big systems people will put in bypasses so you can take it out and service it while.
Oh,
you
yes.
know.
Yeah. They do show kind of an optional installation where you have a hard shut off that you put in on the plumbing line on either end of it so you can remove it for service or whatever. I didn't do that just because I have most of the stuff in my house isolated onto different home runs. Okay. The only thing I had to do here that I'm glad I actually bothered to read the instructions because I didn't think of this was you have to the way I have my plumbing setup is I have a main run coming into like kind of a manifold setup.
Yep.
So I wanted to put this thing
Upstream
of that.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is that my hose for outdoor use comes off of that main manifold, and I don't want
that softened.
I don't want softened water
Right,
going
going
through
on
my
your
sprinkler.
landscape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because it's a waste of money.
So you had to loop around that to get to the
So I just
spigot.
had to, I had to make an earlier offshoot, like, kind of upstream of where so I get nice hard water going outside.
Right.
Yeah. Plants
That's
will love
cool.
it.
So
Yeah, it's really cool. And there's a lot to know about it. That's why as soon as I did it, I was like, Patrick needs to write an article about this.
So, on that subject, I'm going to use my soapbox here at the podcast table to ask for folks who have expertise or if they know someone who has expertise in water problems. We're looking for someone to write this article because there's too much for us to learn. We need someone who knows this in and out. So,
Yeah, I mean, plumbers who are experts, there's a lot to know.
Yeah, there's a lot to know.
It's
a regional problem, right?
Yep, and it's not, you don't want to spend $400 on a unit and however much it costs to install it to find out that really wasn't even the problem you had in the first place because you have iron in your water.
When I said it was regional, I meant like different parts of the country have different things in their water that need to be handled differently. So there's a lot to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that, and when there's regional commonalities, but it even can differ from house to house depending on where your water source is. It's like whatever the geology is of where your water is coming from.
Yeah, totally. And we're still trying to find someone who can school us on evaporative cooling technology. We made this appeal a couple weeks ago. Somebody wanted us to address this because there's very little information on the science behind these things and where they're appropriate and what have you. And it's not the right thing for the Northeast region. So once again, I'm asking for someone out there who's got more experience to weigh in with us and
Cool.
be helpful. You guys have anything to add?
No. I'm good.
That builder show was exhausting. This is going to end.
Always.
So for those of you listening, we have not gone there yet, but
we're
come Monday
confident.
morning, we'll be on our way.
We are confident that it was exhausting. And we really enjoyed meeting you all there.
True. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Justin, Rob, and Jeff for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Keep craft alive and happy building.